How to talk to your parents about their stuff. When it's time for them to sell, how do you have that conversation? Or have the conversation before it's time to sell? Thank you for watching. I'm Jason Roski, owner of the KC Auction Company here in Kansas City, Missouri. And this week we're going to be talking about that conversation that all of us will have at some point, or most of us will have at some point. How do you have that conversation with your mom and dad, or your grandparents, whomever it is, your aunt and uncle, about what they need to do with all of their stuff? Give me just a second. I'd like to share this on my page. While I'm doing that, we're going to kind of go over some of the reasons why this conversation is a challenge and some of the things that we have seen and heard from people who have been in that same situation and some of the things that they have done to make that experience as painless as is possible. And let me just click on the share post here so that all of my friends can see it. Outstanding. So what are some of the factors we're talking about? Obviously, we were hearing a lot. You've seen stories. Richard Eisendberg wrote a viral story that nobody wants your parents' stuff. And there's a lot of good points in that story. And there's a lot of other articles and publications preaching a similar message. I disagree with that message. I think there's a lot of publicity and press and attention being given to that part of the conversation, and that's a part of it, but it's not the entirety of it. It also doesn't take into account 1,000 different issues that we're experiencing now, but have also been experienced for generations upon generations of people. Let's start off talking about some of the things. Part of what this conversation gets into, especially if you're in a time crunch situation. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is having this conversation before it's a necessity. If mom or dad have sold the house and got 30 days to liquidate and move out, that becomes a really stressful time. One of the most stressful times of any person's life is when somebody has died, somebody is dying, they're divorcing, or they're downsizing. There are others, disease and things like that, but downsizing is a truly stressful time in your life. You're trying to sell a big asset. There's always inspections. There's always things going on. And the last thing you need to be doing is, what do we do with 50 years worth of accumulation at that time when there's 1,000 other things going on? So if you have the opportunity to have this conversation before it's a necessity, it makes it much easier. It gives you much more time and leeway and comfort in that conversation. You can have it on a Saturday afternoon. Go have lunch at your favorite place, come home, light the fire if it's cold, whatever makes you comfortable, whatever makes you and your parents comfortable. Do that. Set that tone. Set that time frame specifically for it. Turn off your cell phone. Put it in the other room. Don't even have it there near you. And engage your parents in a heartfelt, genuine conversation about what is important. And in that conversation, you could talk about things like, there's a lot of things in this house that we don't need that aren't important to anybody. The unintended collections. I know in my closet, I have clothes that I haven't worn in 2 and 3 and 4 years. And we try and do a good job of keeping that cleaned up, but, there things come up. Your parents have the same things. And when you take a household full of household goods, the items of everyday life, that there is no reason to pass on, but it adds to that snowball effect. It adds to that feeling of nobody wants anything, and there's nothing there to want. So have the conversation and say, we should probably go through your closets now. There are things you haven't worn in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, whatever it is, and give them to organizations and charities that will make a difference in someone else's lives, and will make your parents feel good about supporting other people, and it alleviates that portion of the conversation. Also, in those things that have a family history, one of the things that's so important is, even if you don't have the space for it, you can document it, you can take pictures of it, and get the story from those who are closest to the source. It is so important that the stories continue. The family photos, even if you have copies of them, know who is in them. You don't need to keep every picture. Most of us have albums, and we also have digital. You don't need to have the piece of paper, but you need to know who is in them and what was important about that day. Why was that picture taken, and which beach was that? Which vacation was it? Did something important happen at that time? In that family Bible, who is Eunice Jones? Why, where does she fit in the family history? All of those things are so important. Thanks for joining, Anthony. If you're watching, if you have any questions, just go ahead and post them here. Send us an email. I'll give you the contact information later on, but posting a question here in the video is a great way. Hit the like button, the share button if you think other people you know would be interested in this content. But having the conversation about the things that are important in the family, even if you don't have a space for them, getting the story and documenting that, it illustrates to your parents that they are important to you. You just may not have the physical space to put them. Oftentimes, if you look at housing sizes today compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, generally speaking, people are buying smaller homes. Most people who are in the age of our parents and grandparents are downsizing, went through 2007, 8, 9, and 10, and understand that owning a house is not the most perfect investment opportunity. It's a good one, but it's not it's not as solid and concrete. So people aren't buying this huge house expecting the next generation to buy it from them at a profit. They're looking at it saying, I can really comfortably afford 2,500 square feet as opposed to 4,200 square feet, and they're more apt to be in a smaller home or staying in an apartment longer. They're starting their lives in the home later. The average age of a first marriage is later. People aren't having as many children. The other conversation to have is people who were born in the baby boomer generation generally had 3, 4, and 5 siblings. Now I have one brother. Most people I know have 1, 2, or 3. And so there's just not as many people in the organization of a family to inherit the objects and or express an interest. So that's a really important thing. Make sure that your parents understand that it is important to you, but you may not physically have the space for it. Gently remind them that, it's not that long ago that they had the same conversation with their parents. There's a phenomenon out there that this is a new problem, that nobody wants the parent stuff. And I got to tell you, it's not. It's not a new problem. It's not a new issue. It's been around for centuries. If everybody inherited everything, Sears, Jones Store, Dillard's, any place that sells furniture wouldn't sell furniture, and they wouldn't have done extremely well after World War II. People bought new. Minimalism is not a new concept. This is a decades old. It's a centuries old concept. You go back to Mission Era, the arts and crafts movement. That was all about this plain, simple living. You go to after World War II, that was all about the minimalist look, plain, simple living. We're seeing there's a resurgence of that, but there's a resurgence of all styles and decorating tastes right now. It's an interesting time frame, and that if you like something, you can find people who like it as well. And you don't feel like you're left in the cold if you like something that's not as popular as the other kids. So that's something that's really important to keep in mind, is that tastes change. And if everybody had inherited something, there would be nothing left there would be no people buying retail, and shopping centers and shopping stores and department stores would have never been successful. They've always sold a lot of furniture. They've always sold a lot of china. They've always sold a lot of silver and crystal and glassware and household goods and decorative objects. Just because something is 50 years old, that doesn't make it an antique. That just makes it good quality used furniture, and that's all it's ever been. Presto furniture back in the 1960s and 70s was dirt cheap. Made in the 1900, 1920 time frame. You could buy it for nothing because nobody wanted it then. The same thing will hold true with what's happening now. Things that are 40, 50 years old that were just kind of mass produced and available for consumption, there's a lot of it coming on the market because that's the natural flow of the rhythms of life. You also have to consider that this is as life expectancies, as people live longer, we have people who are 90 years old, downsizing or passing away. And so those estates are coming on the market. And their 60 and 70-year-old children are now downsizing from their big house. And so you have 2 generations of items, of inventory, of antiques, collectibles, estate items coming into the marketplace at one time. That's never happened before. We've never had this extension of life expectancy to this drastic effect at one time. And so there's just, when you look at it from a logical mindset, there's just a lot more supply. There's a lot more inventory, and the demand is very similar to where it's always been, but there's twice as much supply. So it's not that people don't want it. They just have access to a lot more of it. And when that happens, it's just a matter of economics. When there's twice as much supply and the same amount of demand, well, the prices correct themselves. We have seen that come up since about 2010, when the market really was at its worst. 2010 to 2012 or 13, the prices were terrible because we were just in the heat of that, coming out of the heat of that recession, the depression, whatever you want to call it. Houses weren't selling. Didn't matter if you were trying to downsize or not, you just didn't have a place to go. And so now we're seeing some movement and activity. We've seen a really great increase in buyers in our auctions and prices realized in our auctions, even for the quote unquote brown furniture, even for the nice quality but not truly antique pieces. We're seeing more value and more activity in those markets than we have in years. But it's not so much a matter of people wanting to get more or less. It's a matter of a comfort in the economy of today and a comfort in what people are living with. So those are kind of the basic things. Again, it's if you're watching this, please hit the like button, the heart button, share it with your friends if you think you have people around you that would want to experience the same information, get the same information. The other thing I want to tell you about, I talk about just being respectful. I'm just looking at my notes. I try and write every time. Be respectful of your parents. Even if you've had a hard relationship, challenging relationship, be respectful of them. Even if they've been terrible, they're going through something that nobody wants to go through. It's like I said before, it's one of the most challenging aspects of life to go through is downsizing and moving. And just be respectful of them and their time, but do it in a way that gives you some power and some respect and empathy. And those kinds of things are so important so that they don't feel like they're pressured. They don't feel like they're being alienated. They don't feel like they're being, discarded. Make them understand that they're important. The history of the items are important, but there are certain things that you can and cannot accept, and the things that you cannot accept for whatever reason or don't want to accept for whatever reason it's no less of a reflection. It's no reflection on them and their importance to you. It's just that tastes change, times change. Like I said, if your house is half the size of your parents and they're downsizing, but you've already established your house, you're 45, 50 years old, and you've been in a house for 20 years or 10 years, you don't need a lot of stuff. This might be the first time in history that assets, estate items are going to the great-grandchildren. I mean, you think of somebody who's 90 years old, they've got 90-year-old, their kid is 65, 70, their kid is 45 or 50, which makes a grandchild, but they've already established their home. The great-grandchildren are in their 20s. So you're talking about 3 generations removed. And that is such a large window. And that 20-year-old, that 25-year-old is just now getting their first home set up. And it's usually an apartment. It's not a house. So the timing is weird. The amount of inventory coming on the market, the amount of estates being processed at one time right now is much larger. And so those are all things to keep in mind. And talk to your parents. Your parents are smart. I know, we all had times we thought our parents were crazy. I know I did. My parents were idiots, just like everybody else's parents were idiots who's watching this. As I get older, as you get older, you probably realize there are many things that I realize there are many things that my parents did when I was a kid I thought were crazy and dumb that are very intelligent. Most of our parents have intelligence. Most of our parents understand it on a logical level, on that level of, if you explain it to them, you say, Mom, Dad, let's take the emotions out of this and look at it as a macro issue. The baby boomers are retiring in record numbers, and their parents are still alive. Our children are in a different place than we were at that point. They did not establish a household at 18 to 22. They're establishing households at 25 to 30 and 35, and they're creating their families then. The timing is different. The timing is off on the historical trend lines. And it's just a matter of understanding that it's not a reflection on them. It's just how the world is. And sometimes that's all you can say. So without that being said, again, I'm Jason Roski, the KC Auction Company here in Kansas City. Robert, thanks for watching. Anthony, again, thanks for watching. If you think this video might have some importance to people go ahead and share it with them. Comment on it. Let them know. Hit the like button, the heart button. Let them know that there's some interesting things being talked about. I know a lot of folks are in this situation. And if you have any questions at all, you can write a comment here, send us a private message on Facebook. You can also give us a call at 816-283-3633. Go to our website, kcauctioncompany.com, or you can send us an email at info@kcauctioncompany.com. Next, we're going to talk about certificates of authenticity. Are they worth anything, or are they a piece of garbage? Other than that, we've had a really exciting week here at the auction house. We picked up 3 estates. We got an auction going on right now that's getting a lot of national attention. We're excited about it, and we're really excited about watching that close and going on to the next deals. Again, if you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week. End live video.